Hello folks, welcome to another part in this hybrid zombie shooter tutorial series. Today, we're going to look at something very exciting. We're going to take a look at how to shoot the zombies and obviously, kill them, but also generate damage numbers while we're at it and also have the zombie play different animations when they actually die. Now, this is a pretty straightforward tutorial, but there is a prerequisite for you to watch the damage numbers tutorial that I have posted before. I will have a link in the description for you to follow. Make sure that you follow that tutorial, set up your damage numbers before you start watching this video, because we're going to go and use that existing damage numbers function to improvise on creating the damage numbers on our current zombies that we have in our map. With that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at how to kill some zombies today. Before we go into looking at how to shoot the zombies, one thing that I do want to point out is make sure that your spawn zones, the scale of the spawn zone on the z-axis is set to 0, 0. This makes the spawn zone really, really flat, so it doesn't really interfere with our bullets when we are firing it, because we're using a line trace, and because the spawn zone is a type of actor, it is going to interfere with our line trace. So one of the solutions is to just set the scale to 0, 0 and set the location on the z-axis to 0, and it still works. Everything works as normal. The zombie just drops down a little because the collision box is almost touching the ground, so it's trying to adjust that collision, but you can see the zombies are still spawning in perfectly fine. So let's go to your content drawer, and then let's go to the weapon system, and we're going to go to the blueprints, and we're going to open up BP weapon base. Inside of here, we have the function for generate damage numbers. Now this controls generating the damage numbers on the dummy. Now, if I take this dummy and I set this to zombie base, if I go ahead and press play, I pull out my weapon, and I'm going to go ahead and shoot the zombie, and everything seems to be working fine. But here's where the restriction of get actor of class is going to come into play. Let me show you. If I select this BP zombie, which was working perfectly fine, hold down Alt on my keyboard, and if I drag over, I'm going to duplicate this zombie, and it's the exact same class, right? One is the BP zombie base, and the other one is BP zombie base 2. Now, if I go ahead and press play, and if I pull out my weapon, the BP zombie base, the first one, working perfectly fine. However, if I now shoot the second zombie, nothing's going to happen. That's because this actor of class node will get you only the first actor of its kind or of its class type when you do this get actor of class. That's what its restriction is, and that's why we also have get all actors of class option here to get every single actor that is of that class type. So the actor of class is not going to work for us. So we can no longer use this get actor of class. However, we can just use this for our dummy. So I'm just going to replace this back to dummy, and I'm going to leave it as it is. What I'm going to use is the actual class itself. So I'm going to drag off of our hit actor, and I'm going to go ahead and search for get class. And if I scroll down, I should have a utility function for get class. It's built into Unreal Engine. I'm going to select all of this and just move so I can get some room here. And I'm going to drag off of this return class and do an equal. And this select class, I'm going to go ahead and search for the zombies class, which is our BP zombie base. And here, our branch is looking for actor of class. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect that condition, and we're going to do or Boolean. We're going to drag the Boolean output from our class check or the equal check for our class, and I'm going to connect it here and connect this Boolean to the condition here. So what happens is if either one of this is true, then the true will fire. The both of them have to be false for the false node to fire here. So if the dummy class is true, then it's going to be true, regardless if it is a zombie class or not. If the zombie class is true, then it's going to fire true, regardless if the dummy class is true or not. So now if I go in game, and if I press play, both of these zombies are here. I shoot the first zombie, looks very good. And now I shoot the second zombie. Now I get my damage numbers as well. And now if I shoot my dummy, I get my dummy damage numbers as well. So everything is set. Now, one issue that I do want to fix, not an issue, more like an aesthetics, is that when I shoot the dummy from the front of it, and if I go to the side, you'll see the numbers are actually not visible anymore. And even if I shoot the dummy from the back, you can see the shadow is popping up for the numbers, but then I can't really see the numbers on the back. It is only one-sided, so it's like a 1D. It's on a 1D plane. We want to now make it into almost like a 3D plane so the player can see it from any direction. So to do that, pretty straightforward. We're going to go to our content drawer, go to our core, weapon system, training, damage UI dummy, and we're going to use a tick function to rotate the widget towards the player while it's alive, right? So we're going to go ahead and search for an event tick. We're going to drag in this widget, and we're going to first do a valid check. It's always good to do this valid check just in case something goes wrong and this widget gets invalid. Then you're going to get errors that you'll probably spend a lot of time trying to figure out what went wrong, right? And you can always do a print string here for you to know when this widget failed. It's like you can say damage UI widget class invalid. So if you see this error code, you will know that inside of your damage UI, this widget class is not valid anymore. First, we're going to get our player camera manager, and we're going to get actor location. Second, we're going to drag in this widget, and we're going to get the world location and drag off of this world location, and then search for a node called find look at rotation. And the start is going to be our widget, and the target is going to be our camera. And we're going to drag in our widget one more time, and we're going to set our world rotation to this return value here, and then off of is valid, just plug it into this execution node. So that's all you got to do here. So now if I go ahead and press play, and if I pull out the weapon, let me go behind the characters. And if I start shooting, you can see the numbers are going to constantly keep rotating to face the player. So you can see the numbers from a 360-degree angle. And the zombies are taking the damage as usual as well. And I will leave it up to you to go ahead and tweak the size of the numbers, the speed. I've showed this to you in our previous tutorial, so I don't think we need to dwell too much into that. And for our headshot modifier, we're going to go to our BP zombie base and then add in a sphere collision. And we're going to attach this to the mesh and then rename this as the head. So while having the head selected, if you try to attach it to a parent socket, it's not going to let you do that because it's an inherited component. So we have to manually use the construction script to attach this head to the zombie's head. So in our construction script, we're going to drag in our head and drag off of this and look for attach component to component. And connect this to the execution pin. And the parent would be our mesh here. And the socket name would be head. Every character, whether it's Mixamo or any other platform that the character was made on, usually the head is named as the head. So we're just going to use head. And if your skeletal mesh has a different name for the head, then you would go ahead and place it here. And for location rule, rotation rule, and for scale rule, we're just going to snap the target and then compile. Now, if you go to your viewport, you will see that the sphere is now attached to the head. And you can now play with this until you can scale it down to your preference. It's going to be a little tricky because some of these models have a bigger head, some of these models have smaller head size. So we're going to just try to put it in a general location where the head is going to be. So when the player do shoot around the head area, they're going to get that critical damage. All right. And the last thing that we're going to do is select the head, and then we're going to look for tags. We're going to add in a new tag, and we're going to name this head. Compile and save. And if we go in game, and if I pull out my weapon, it's a little different on these because you can see for this zombie, the headshot is working fine, but this zombie's head is way too big that the headshot is not working very well. Again, another restrictions of using Mixamo character when everybody's head is different and stuff. And you can play with this until you find your perfect spot. And one more thing, if you want to move your sphere up and down, and if your y-axis here moving is not working for you, just go to your construction script, and where you have your location rule, just set this to keep relative instead of snap to target. So that will allow you to move your sphere radius for the head up and down. And in game, it should work the same. You should be able to shoot the zombie in the head, and you should still be able to get your critical hits off of it. And one last thing that we need to do for the head is go under the collision settings. You can always search for collision here. And the collision preset, we're going to set this to custom, so it enables us to edit these things. And the object type, we're going to switch this to pawn. So this makes sure that our weapon can actually detect this, because if you go to your weapon base and go to your line trace, you can see the object types that we're looking for is pawn, world static, world dynamic, and also physics body. So as long as this head is any one of those four, then our line trace will trace it properly. Now let's take a look at damage. So we're going to go to our BP weapon base where we have our generate damage number functions. At the very end, after we generate our damage numbers, we're going to drag off of it and we're going to call for a node named apply damage. Now this node is built into Unreal Engine, so you don't need to do anything special to get this in. Once you call in this node, you need to specify which actor is being damaged and what is their base damage. This is the two most important requirements for this to work properly. So for our damage actor, it's going to be our zombie. So we're going to go back to our hit result break and drag in our hit actor all the way to our damaged actor here, just like this. And for the base damage, we already have done the function for getting the weapon damage. So we can drag in our damage here and then just plug it into the base damage. And I am going to set up our player character as our damage causer. There we go. So this is all you need to do to send a message to the zombie saying, hey, the player is attacking you for this much of damage. So now back in your zombie base blueprint, if you go to your event graph, find an empty spot, and you're going to look for a function called event any damage. Again, this event is built into Unreal Engine. It's part of this apply damage function. So it's already built in. You don't need to do anything special to get it. And it's going to give you that 4 information nodes from this apply damage, just like you see it here. So here you would then go ahead and deduct the zombie's health based on the damage that is coming in. Let's create a very simple health pool for the zombie to go down as the player shoots it and kill the zombie when the health pool gets to 0. So we're going to create a new variable, and we're going to call this health and set this to a float. And then also we're going to create a max health and set this to a float. Compile and save it. We're going to drag in our health, do get health. Now for this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and set this health to like 100. So the assault rifle does like, 10 damage. So it takes 10 bullets to kill a zombie. We're going to drag off of our health and we're going to search for subtract. And we're going to subtract this incoming damage. And then now we're going to drag in our health node, and then we're going to do a set, and then set this new value as your new health, or the zombie's new health. And once we set it, we're going to do a new function, and this function is called perform health check. And this perform health check, we're going to get our health, and we're going to check to see if our health is less than or equal to 0. If it is less than or equal to 0, let's connect this branch and connect this perform health check here. And here, when the health hits 0 or less than 0, we want to now play a death animation for the zombie and then, obviously kill it. The first thing that I want to do here is drag in my character movement and then set the movement mode to none so that the zombie immediately stops moving as soon as the health hits 0. Next is we want to let our animation blueprint know that the zombie has died. For that, we need to create a zombie death interface call. We're going to go to our content drawer. In our interface folder, BPI zombies, we're going to open it up. And we're going to add in a new function and name this announce _ z death. Compile and save. And we can close this out. We can go back to our zombie base. We're going to drag in our mesh and then get the anim instance off of our mesh. And we're going to go ahead and call the announce z death, just like so. And in our animation blueprint, let's go to our event graph, and we're going to open up our interface, and there should be an announce z death function. Let's double click on it to implement it. And here, the simplest way to notify the animation blueprint that the zombie has died is to set up a Boolean, and we're going to call this is dead with a question mark, and then connect this to set. And we're going to set this to true. And we need to now impact the anim graph based on this Boolean. So first, we're going to pull our locomotion up here, drag off of it, and we're going to cache it. So we're going to search for cache, and you should get a new save cached post. And we're going to name this as cache underscore locomotion. So this will cache all the animation that's inside of here. We're going to get a new state machine, and we're going to name this death. Inside of this state machine, there's an entry point. Drag off of this entry, and then we're going to add in a state, and this would be the death state, right? Inside of here, you can play any animation as you would like. And I have 4 animations that we downloaded from Mixamo, and I want to use all these 4 or a variation of this 4. So each zombie, when they die, I want them to play a different animation of sort. For us to do this, we're going to go ahead and search for a node named blend poses by int. So this will be basically an integer. So basically what this does is if you provide a index number, based on the index number, it's going to go ahead and play the sequence or the animation sequence that is connected to this blend pose. Right now we have 4 animations. So we're going to go ahead, right click, and we're going to go ahead and select the add blend pin to get ourselves a 3rd pin. Do the same thing. And then now you got yourself 4 pins. Next, I'm going to drag and drop all of these animations into the animation blueprint. And now I'm going to plug all of them into these pins. It doesn't matter which one you plug where, it's going to randomize it anyways. And connect this animation pose to the output animation pose result. Let's go ahead and compile. Now, when we go back to our animation graph, we have our death state machine. We're going to call in for another node, which would be blend poses by bool. And this is pretty straightforward. It has a true pose and a false pose. If the bool that you input in here, if it is true, it's going to run the true pose. And if the bool is false, then it's going to run the false pose. So I'm going to drag in my isDead Boolean variable here, and I'm going to connect it in here directly. Now, if isDead is true, then I want to run the true pose here, which is our death animation. So it will run the entire animation. And if it is false, then I want to run this locomotion. Now you can simply collect this locomotion, but because we have already cached it, let's use our cache. So if you right click and search for cache locomotion, you should get a note for use cache post locomotion, and you will get this. And connect this here. This keeps it nice and clean. And the blend time, we can just leave it at 0.1, so it immediately blends into the death animation. And connect this node to your output result, and now press compile. And now you can see the false pose is going to run because by default, our isDead node is set to false. And the last thing that we need to do is the actual index for our integer here. So I'm going to drag off of this active child index, and I'm going to promote it to a variable and name this the death index. And off of our event graph, after we set the isDead to true, we're going to go ahead and set our death index here. And for that, we're going to go ahead and get a random integer in range and connect this value here. And this random integer could be anywhere from 0 to 3 because we have 4 animations. It will start at 0 and it will count up 4, which will end up at 3. And this will help us to randomly pick one of the 4 animations. And now back in our BP zombie base. So once we announce the death for the zombie to play the animation, we want to wait a couple seconds before we go ahead and destroy it for the animation to completely play out. You cannot do a delay node inside of the function, so we have to do it outside. So in our event graph, we're going to go ahead and create a new custom event. And this custom event would be cleanup underscore dead zombie. And here we're going to go ahead and delay. Here we want to delay until the animation has played and also give it a second or something so that the body stays on the floor and such, right? So if you go to your actual animation and if you hover over it, you will notice that there's a sequence length node that tells you how long the sequence is. So go over all of your animation and you will see what is your longest sequence length. And then you just add a couple seconds to it or a second or two to it. And then that would be your delay time. For us, our sequence length is 3.3. So I'm going to set this to about like 4.1. And then once this is completed, then I'm going to go ahead and destroy actor. This will destroy the zombie from the game. And back in our perform health check, before we go ahead and clean up the zombie, we want to drag in our mesh and also our head here. And we want to set collision object type. And we're going to set this to something like destructible. Because if you go to your weapon base and if you find the line trace function, you'll notice that our line trace is looking for anything that is a pawn, world static, world dynamic, and physics body. So we're going to set this to something that is not one of those four. So our line trace will start ignoring this mesh. So we will no longer be able to shoot through it. Same thing for the head. We're going to go ahead and copy and paste this node one more time, and then set this to our head as our target. And now we also want to do the same thing for our capsule component. So we're going to drag in our capsule component, and then we're going to get a copy of this set collision objective type, set this to destructible, and then set this target. And once we set all of this, then we want to go ahead and call for clean up dead zombie. Compile, and in our event graph, after we set the health, then we want to go ahead and perform our health check. So every time the zombie gets damaged, we want to perform a health check. So if I press play, I can grab my weapon and then start firing at the zombie. You'll notice that the zombie is going to do an animation, completely different animations. They're going to stay on the ground for a second because this is what we set up as our delay. And it's going to go ahead and die. And now while the zombie is dying, if I continuously keep firing, you won't see any more damage numbers, and the zombie is going to go ahead and do their death animation. And one last thing that I want to show you is that make sure you select your mesh, and then you go down to your collision channel or collision presets, and then set this to the collision preset to custom. Make sure the object type is set to pawn, or else your damage numbers or your weapon contact with the character won't work. And then off of our trace response for camera, set this to ignore, or else your camera will clip with the zombies, and then the camera will start acting weird. It will try to zoom in and out quickly, and it will start twitching. You don't want that. Same thing for the head. Make sure that you set your collision preset to custom, then your object type to pawn, and then set the camera to ignore. So your zombie completely ignores your camera. Same for your capsule component as well. Set the collision preset to custom, object type, leave it at pawn, and then the camera, we're just going to set this to ignore. All right, folks, so that's all I have for you for today. I hope you enjoyed this video today because this is one of my favorite tutorials. This is when the game truly starts coming alive, when you start having zombies move around and you're shooting them to death and stuff. So I really enjoyed making this tutorial. And if you had enjoyed watching this tutorial and learned anything, hit that like button and share this video with somebody who's probably looking for something very similar to this. So again, thank you very much for stopping by. I really appreciate your support for this channel to make it grow continuously. I will catch you all in the next one. Until then, have yourself a great day. Bye-bye now.